by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Torah review. My name is Uzziah Lewy, one of the teachers of Congregation D.C.B, CHOKMAH, BINAH, located at 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Our phone number is 347-622-9090. We'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. I'd like to wish everyone an early Shabbat Shalom, and hope that everyone had a good week. Praying that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to be with us all, bless us and protect us, and also giving glory unto his high and holy name, because he is the King of the universe, Yehudah, and there is no other king but him. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for life, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And I thank the Creator for all of you, for tuning in, and for coming on and continuing to support us, even on this, I guess, podcast, this weekly review, as you have your unwavering support and your love for this platform, and for the teachers who come on to do their best to try to guide people in a righteous path in order to be in good stead with the Creator of heaven and earth. So thanking you all once again. Your contributions and your support doesn't go unnoticed. We notice all of you, and we encourage you all to ask questions, even if it's something that you feel that you should know and you might not know. It's never no such thing as a bad question, or as they say, a dumb question. Everything is valid. We're here to help each other and to teach one another, right? So we need you all to continue to ask your questions. That's what the elders are here for. That's what the teachers are here for. That's what Nasik is here for. He's a well of knowledge, the amount of years that he's been on this earth, and he might not look it, but also the amount of time that he's been in Israel is just it's a well of knowledge that he has within him that he could pass on, and that's what he's here. That's why he does these things, so that he's able to pass on whatever it is that he's gained throughout the years. So now he could take you to, as I say, like, we could take you to the stream of water, to the river to drink, but we can't make you drink. So you have to be a willing heart to want to gain this knowledge, and also be engaging and ask the questions that you have. The question doesn't necessarily have to be on the lesson. It could be on anything that you might have. And if he has an answer, he will bring it forth to you. So we thank all of you once again, and we pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with you all. At this time, I'm going to pass it on to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Intelligent Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, due respect to the platform on the D.C.B platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yeriel ben Yissaschar, to the host Chief Uziel, to the princes, chiefs, rabbinic Kohanim, Maureen, and visitors, brothers and sisters, agree all in the tongue of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to start off with Adonai Sabtai Titakufiya Giti Lateaka. O Lord, open down my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. We'll be the psalm we mainly going to deal with, try to tie into the particular sidra for the week that just passed, will be Psalm 50. the Sidra could be Wayikra, and Wayikra, and he called, is the third book of the third book of what we consider the Chumash, first five. Some people refer to it in a more general term of the Torah, which is the book of Leviticus. We'll be starting a new book, and it's the third of the book of the 5 books. And it's interesting that the Sidra goes from this particular week from Leviticus 1, of course, to 5:26. The Haftorah that normally goes along with this, which is very interesting. Haftorah, just in case I forget, to remind people, take your time and go over it. Some very interesting highlights in that particular Haftorah, which is Isaiah, the 43rd chapter. I was picking it up from the 21st verse, going to the 44th chapter, 23rd verse. And like I said, the psalm I'll be dealing with will be the Psalm 50. Now, we find that mostly, I'll start off with, most of the sidros that we read and talk about, it starts off basically with a word. We have, sidros, like, in the first book, all the 5 books, out of 5 books we have, starts off with nouns, like bury sheep, and noun or pronoun, something like that. We got bury sheep, then we got shemot, names. Bury sheep is at the beginning, or in the beginning at first, a beginning. And then shemot is names. And then we have, skipping over, Bamidbar, which is basically in the desert, but they transfer, they translate as numbers, but it means in the desert. And then you got Devarim, which is words. So what we find interesting here is that this is the only one out of the first 5 books that's noted and known as a verb. And he called. You say, wow. And verbs, we know, according to the English, supposed to describe action. Basically, what basically means is words of action. Words of action. And it happened to be a verb. Adverb, if I remember my English correctly, describes a verb or modify a verb. But you have, just the only book that's actually about a verb, is about action. And then what is interesting is not only that, it takes place, and it says and. So that we have other stuff like and this and that in books, what I mean. But we have a conjunction tying one chapter to the next chapter, or one thing to another thing in the concept. But you have a whole book starting off and. So you got the third book, which is the middle between the beginning of our history, and our development, to the completion of our full development, getting ready to enter into the promised land. So you have this in-between point. And this in-between point, it was said, this could be, basically, we could look at as our middle line, our core fabric, as, Israelites, chosen ones of God, in that sense. And I got to say often, we're chosen not because we're better. We're chosen for a particular mission. Not because we're better, because in the book it makes it very clear we was the least, of all the peoples on the whole planet. But we was endowed with a responsibility, because it'd have been easy for God to say, I'm gonna take a people that is the greatest, most powerful people on the planet and have them present this thing out. The laws, this moral cultures, this moral fabric, the highest moral code of ethics. But the Creator had took the least to show that everyone is capable of developing and rising higher than their circumstances. So now, most people, when we find out in the book in Leviticus. Matter of fact, the book of Leviticus pretty much out of 613 law, statutes, and judgments that we enumerate in without the books, the CHOKMAH, that it tends to have the most laws out of all the other books. So about 240 some laws, 47 something like that, laws that they have in the book of Leviticus. So commandments that no other section has as many laws as this. Now, sometimes the book of Leviticus in English, like the law of the Levites or the law of a priestly class, we read in reference to a lot of sacrifices, and then we get into other laws in reference to certain moral issues as well. But what is interesting that I find is that we have a book that's mainly showing our purpose and our fabric about worshiping. Now, most people don't read this book. They find it boring. Whether those that's of the Jewish community, the Israelite community, for the most part, they say it's talking about sacrifices and different types of offerings with animal slaying and stuff. We don't do that. That seems so barbaric. That seems so backwards. How does sacrificing the animal actually, acquit you of sin? So we're talking in a concept where we was up without a temple for 2,000 years. All right, so since we've been without a temple for basically close to 2,000 years, and people really, for the most part, don't do sacrifices around the world, for the most part, openly. But there still are people that still offer up different animals and have blood rituals that they actually do until this very day. So though it may seem archaic to the majority of people of today, it's a real concept in the minds of people from antiquity even up to this very day. Now, another area when we look at, before I go into it and highlight some of the things within the book of Leviticus, is that the question is, why discuss those things today? Why talk about it? What would be the purpose of discussing about sacrifices, today? Shouldn't there be more things we talk about, more important issues about society, about other moral lessons? And the thing is that I've been, as early as from the time of one of the great rabbis and teachers, the Rambam, which is known as Moses Maimonides, lived, basically about 1,000 years ago. He noticed that those people of this background never really study about the sacrifices and offerings of the temple and worship service. But yet, we're looking for the temple to be reestablished again. And then you have those factions that want the temple to be established again, but don't want to go back to animal sacrifice, rather. So now, and very few people, when we come to this, it's in the book that we're supposed to gauge our life by, but very few people, though we gauge our life by, actually study and know enough to be able to expound upon it, because it seems so foreign and so far removed from our daily concept for today. They have a tradition amongst those that follow rabbinic tradition that children learn about sacrifices because they're supposed to be pure. That's one thing. And this particular sidra covers 5 different types of sacrifices in this particular sidra. It talks about the ole offering, then it talks about the mincha offering, those type of things it mentions. It mentions about the katat offering. It mentions about the Hashem offering. It mentions about the Shalom offerings. So those are different offerings, 5 different categories it covers within this particular portion. What I'd like to bring out as we get ready to go into is look at some of the lessons we can learn from this and understand what the offerings are concerning, how we view it, because most people just see it as you just burn the meat up and you expect your sins to be, forgiven because you burnt the meat up. Well, the sacrifices is not really what actually make the atonement of forgiveness for the sin. It's the Creator that designate the forgiveness for the sin. The sacrifice is what we do. We do to actually, bring about a certain type of remorse within ourselves. And there's only a certain sacrifice that is referred to as a Reah Nicoah, which means a sweet aroma or savior aroma to the Creator. The Creator do not eat. We don't feed, the God we worship. So he don't eat the sacrifices. He don't eat the blood. We know even in some cultures to the very day, they go to a shrine or if they don't go to a shrine, they go to a grave site and they might bring fruit and different edibles, knowing that only thing gonna get it is the varmints or a passerby. So, but they feel within themselves that they're giving of themselves, and they have a certain type of reverence for that particular act that they look upon within themselves. All right, so now, before I go any further, like I said, there's so much stuff in this the book of just a few chapters in this particular portion that I'm just going to be able to highlight a few things, and it's going to be so much on the table for you to discuss with your various teachers. We had just finished the book of Exodus with the accounting of the tabernacle, but now we go into the intricate workings and operation. See, in most societies, we don't, when they have a priest class, they have a religious class, especially in ancient times, the regular populace didn't know what their priests do. They don't know how they operate. But yet you look at them to be your intercessor between you and whatever, deity you believe. You look for that individual or those individuals to be your intercessor. But yet their whole action and operation is only exclusive to them. You don't have no knowledge of what they do as an initiative in that particular area. You are left outside of the knowledge of how they operate. We, on the other hand, have the knowledge. We have the knowledge that we're able to understand exactly how our priests supposed to operate, how sacrifice should be given, what sacrifice should be given. That means we don't necessarily have to be told by the priest what sacrifice to bring up. We don't necessarily have to be told by the priest, how he should do his job. We know what job he's supposed to be doing. We know how the sacrifice should be treated. We know exactly what to bring. We're the only people on in this ancient society that was actually had that kind of knowledge concerning our most spiritual side of our institution. So now in the book of Leviticus, open up in this wise. And the Lord called unto Moses and spoke unto him out of the tent of meeting, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and saying to them, When any man of you bringeth an offering unto the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd, or of the flock. All right, so this is the Creator speaking to Moses. Now, what we have, and I'm just going to read the verse, the beginning part in Hebrew that we have here. And it goes on, Vayikra el Moshe, and he spoke unto Moses. And he called, that's good. Let me just do that over. Vayikra el Moshe, and he called to Moses. And Vadaber Adonai Alai, and the Lord spoke unto him. All right. So now I just want to stop right there. When it said, and he called, usually that's not a formula that you find in scripture. God being referred to as just the he when he's making a call. It's always, Adonai, Daber, Adonai, Omer, or Adonai, Korah, something like that there. So, we always, always had the creator name introduced first, in reference to him calling out. So when we look at this particular portion, this is one time that he's called and it's using he as opposed to saying, the creator, Adonai, name not mentioned in the beginning. But when he spoke and said, and spoke the Lord. All right, so the Lord spoke. So then you know that it's not strange. Now, can we imagine one takeaway? And I'm just going to highlight just a few points in this here. One of the takeaways when we look at that is that this is pretty much after the tabernacle already erected, established, and in full operation. Now you already have a Kohen, Aaron, and you have his sons. Now you got 13 times when it said, and God called, to Aaron and Moses. That means that they both was talked to, called 13 times together. And then you got 13 times pretty much throughout the scriptures that God only called Moses. And that it's a difference. All right. Can you imagine that in the sight of every 3 million people or 600,000 men of war, that the creator called, and the call is a lot more louder than speaking or saying. When you want to speak to somebody, it's one thing. When you say to somebody, it's even a little closer, more intimate. But when you call somebody, you calling out from a distance to come close. That's what the call is. You want them to come close. So here it is that you had Mount Sinai, when God gave his revelation and spoke those 10 words, the 10 matters of the commandments in Exodus, the 20th chapter, that you had millions of people, or 600,000 men of war, that said, Moses, speak thou with us, but let not God speak with us, unless we die. So those amount of people could not stand to hear God call. And yet one man could stand to hear God call. And yet these people were prepared to hear God speak. And Moses, God just called upon him in the midst of everybody. And then what's even more miraculous is that God called Moses and the rest of the people did not hear a word. That's something to consider. That I'm standing in a crowd. Everybody in the highlight of the day. The first day the tabernacle was erected. Rosh Chodesh in the month of Aviv. And yet, he gives me a special call that the high priest and his sons and no one else can hear. And then what that also do, it also brings out the point that I'm calling you because this is meant for you first of all. You're the one capable of making sure this is being carried out. Aaron have his position. His children have his position. Everybody in the nation have their position. But this one is exclusively between me and you. Because you're the one who can handle this. Now, so when you call somebody, also you want to come close. So when we talk about sacrifices in here, the word korban in Hebrew, which we often translate as sacrifices, which is sort of a poor translation, in English from what it actually might mean. It actually means in itself. Korban means to come close, come to the word, in the kuf, race. It means, race. Means actually to come close. So when you talk about come close, when we bring up an offering, we actually trying to get closer to God. It also had the same root for a relationship, a relative. And it also, karab itself means to have a battle or an encounter. But in order for an encounter, you have to come close. Now, another thing that's unique that most people find when they read it, almost every Masoretic text, the aleph is written small in this particular text. So you say, well, why is it that in the portion Vayikra, the aleph, the last letter of the word, is written so much smaller than the other letters? And that's something that those that would look at the language and say, well, why is it such? That it's written different. And then what's unique here is that in most English books, and the letter and, the A is written so much larger than most other books. So I mean, they notice that whether they, focus on the Hebrew part or not. So an aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. All right, so if it's the first letter of our language, also it has a sense of, power. You're talking about words like Elohim, and then you got words like aloof, which means like a leader, one that's like a leader, a general, or somebody that's high up. So why that letter, out of all the letters, and which is the first letter of the alphabet, that has so much power and represents so much power, even hieroglyphically, it represents an ox, which is supposed to be a thing of strength, and yet it's written so small. And if you left the letter aleph out and just put another letter there as opposed to the aleph, which is a hey, it could be, kara, Vayikra in itself, which means with the kuf, resh, hey, it's coming the root for happening, or just something just happened out the blue. And there's so much talk and debates going on about why it's written small, to be discussed further, amongst your various teachers. But I'm just going to leave this one here, is that there's a thing about humility. We know that Moses was the meekest man of on the whole planet in his time. And yet, what it is to be meek, and though God called him directly in the midst of a crowd, when he talked about Bezalel and Aholiab, he telling Moses about them. But yet Moses standing with the rest of the people, and he calls Moses directly while the tabernacle is functioning, while officers are put in place. So that would normally make a person say, I must be special. I got to be really somebody. Moses himself knew he was special, but he never let that quality blow his head up as an ego, because Moses himself know his qualifications, but he recognized his qualifications and promotion only stems not from himself, but from the God that endowed him. And if anybody else was endowed with that same qualifications, perhaps they could do better. So he was mindful of that. So when a person is meek or humble, meekness don't mean being meek don't mean you're weak. And we used to have a saying: to be humble don't mean you walk around and stumble. All right. To be kind don't mean you're blind. So what we're saying is that one of the definitions I usually give for being meek is strength under control. That you know your strength, you know your strong points, but you harness your strong points and not trying to always exhibit your strong points. Because then it would be a thing of ego. So Moses was capable, and when it was necessary, he stood up and showed his strong points. He showed his strong points as a leader after the setting of the golden calf. He showed his strong points when God said, leave him alone. He stood there and said, blot me out, and praying for the people of Israel. So he showed his strong points when he seen in the very beginning of his encounter with the Egyptian. So he showed his strong points, but also he didn't let his strong points dominate him. He controlled them. And that's why he's referred to as the meekest man on the planet. So when God called Moses, that was a unique thing in that sense. And he told him about sacrifice. I'm just going to speed up a little bit because I'm sure there's so much to say on this particular portion. But I ask you to go over it with your teachers. But one of the things, I like to bring out in the first portion of the book, it said, if this offering be a burnt offering of the herd, he shall offer it a male without blemish, and he shall bring it to the door of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. And he shall, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and shall be accepted, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. All right. Atonement in itself, the Hebrew word kapar, it means to cover. That's what it actually means. It means to cover up, not necessarily erase or wash away. And that's all it means. It means to cover up certain atrocities that goes on, your sin, your weaknesses. And say, and he shall kill the bullock before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall present the blood and dash the blood round about the altar, that is at the door of the tent of meeting. All right. And then it goes on to say about, this particular offering. And he shall flay the burnt offering and shall cut it into pieces. And the sons of Aaron the priest shall put fire upon the altar and lay wood in order upon the fire. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall lay the pieces and the head and the suet in order upon the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. But its inwards and its legs shall he wash with water, and the priest shall make the whole smoke on the altar for a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet savior unto the Lord. All right. Now, when the person offer up that particular offering itself, all right. What we have is that it's like a complete surrendering. The priest get nothing out of it, and the individual that will bring it up gets nothing out of it. That's a burnt offering. It's consumed. It's like saying, I deserve death for what I did. So that's one offering that's brought up and it's completely consumed. Certain offerings the priest get a piece of. Some offerings that the priest and the individual get a piece of, and then in this case, no one partake of this particular burnt offering. It's wholly burned up on the fire, on the wood. It's other things too, because the wood itself is considered, an offering itself, because it's, that is added on there. But that's another story to be taken up. I don't have time to really go into it at this particular point. But I'd like to bring out several things here, and one of the things I like to bring is it gives direction how the thing will be done, and it goes on. It talks about the different offerings here. What offerings which in the first first chapter, going into the second chapter, and going into the third chapter. So the different offerings is mentioned here. I'm just going to go past that. Now, But I'd like to focus on the 4th chapter just a little bit. All right, in the 4th chapter of Leviticus, it says, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If anyone shall sin through error in any of the things which the Lord have commanded not to be done, and shall do any one of them, if the anointed priest shall sin so as to bring guilt on the people, then let him offer for a sin offering, which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering." All right. Now, the reason I want to jump over there just for a minute, when they talk about people sinning, and it starts from the bottom. Most people in most areas, when they have most religion, they say so-and-so is a holy person. So-and-so can't do any wrong. And they look at the next individual. It was a story, I heard, many years ago. It was about a story about people on Yom Kippur. And on Yom Kippur, when they got to it, there's a certain part in the prayer that people prostrate themselves, that those that follow a certain tradition prostrate themselves down and on Yom Kippur, flat out on the ground. So the rabbi, or in some congregations, the leader of the congregation, spiritual leader of the congregation, prostrate themselves straight out. And sometimes they even add things, say, I'm nothing but dust and ashes, like Father Abraham would say. Then you had a wealthy individual, esteemed individual of the community. He does the exact same thing. He gets down, prostrate himself, and say, "Oh Lord, I'm nothing but dust and ashes." Then you had this really not too savory character of the community, that's, really not savory at all, but he happened to be there on Yom Kippur. And he gets down, prostrate himself, and say, "Lord, I'm nothing but dust and ashes." So the esteemed individual of the community said, "Rabbi, where'd he get off talking like that?" Why? Because he got upset because he figured he don't qualify to say he could be dust and ashes. The rabbi is a man of importance. That here, another guy is a very important in the community, though he might not have any kind of clergy status, but he's very esteemed in the community. Maybe a big time leader in the community as well, where this guy is a poor individual that's known not to have much of anything. And because he say, "I'm nothing but dust and ashes," his thing would be more to the point. But yet it shows the guy in the middle would say, he don't qualify to say that because me and the rabbi qualify to say that. Some people will look at the next individual and figure, you're not even qualified to stand before God and say you got this and that and the other, and expect for help. So in some religious orders, they think the leadership is above reproach. And our book, when it comes to sacrifices, shows that the leadership is not above reproach. And it starts off with the most highest spiritual man in the nation, which is the Kohen, which represent not God, but represent the people. So now another thing I like to bring up before I move on right quick is that since when one man's sin affect all of us, but yet it says he sinned and brings sin upon the people. This is what the priest does. When the priest do something wrong and he representing the people, he caused the people to have a blemish. And then the next level they talk about in the book, I'm just going to fast forward because I'm sure it's going to take a lot of time for people to go over it, is that when we talk about in reference to the for lack of a better word, the aristocracy of a nation, especially more so reflecting our nation, you got the priests. Then the next thing is talk about the heads of the congregations. That means the leadership of the congregations. The elders, pretty much. If they sin, what they bring about. And they use the word if. That adverbial clause, the word if, I-F, that adverbial clause those things that had been done but escaped from not being done, or those things that escaped from being done that has been done. That if word is used for them. If they sin, first if the Kohen sin, next if the elders of the community all together collectively sin on a particular area. But then when it comes to the prince, the actual leader of the secular community, the secular leader of the community, or you could say the king later, it says when he sinned. So if the priest most likely is not going to make too many errors because he's involved constantly about being close to the Creator and being sanctified to the Creator. The leaders of the community, elders, they got other people's support. They got support. They got support team. So they really would, completely cohesively sin and make mistakes like that. But the individual, because of his power, because of his authority, because of he being an individual, it says when. That means it is most likely going to happen. That's a strange thing for Eam and Kadashir, when the prince, would sin. So now, those are some of the things to think about as we go through those particular areas. Then it talks about the regular populous community. Then it talks about the individual man down on the bottom of the totem pole in the community. We talk about all those different sins and different areas you bring up. Now, when we talk about the sacrifice itself, it's like we want to get closer to the Creator. Now, we know that sacrifice don't clear sins because we read a lot that God, and a lot of people use that, says, since the temple's not functioning today, how do we get rid of sin? Well, even the prophets told us, obedience is better than the sacrifice. We know also that God said he didn't desire sacrifices. We know that David said, a contrite heart and a broken spirit thou wilt not despise. Hosea said, return to God with words, not with animals, not with bullocks. Return to God with words. So we know that when people think that we can, atone and repent without animal sacrifice, the book focus on that. That's so. Nowhere in the book did it say that we cannot atone without animal sacrifices. That was a part of an outward ritual for inward thing. And there's much more stuff I could speak on, but just to save time, I like to bring on a couple of things in the Haftorah that goes along with that. But it talks about a lot of things about violating the different sacrifices here, and I'll probably hit on a couple more things next time because there's just so much in the book of Leviticus, talking about offerings and about sins and about errors and about intentional sins. And one of the things, that's interesting that you should look over too, I was discussing it, Isha, is that a person that says unaware of a sin, and then find out later that they're guilty of a trespass, it costs them more than a guy that is aware of their sin and sin. You say, well, that's strange. How is a guy that's unaware, when he find out he's guilty, he never knew it, he didn't know it before, but he's guilty. It's almost like they say in America, of the laws of no excuse. Well, we got areas very similar to this. And for him to try to get close to the Creator, he does more. It costs him technically more. So when you read those different sacrifices for the different individuals in different cases, you'll find out that one costs more than the guy that actually just sinned and said, I'm going to straighten this out right away. So those are some of the things to think about and discuss amongst your various teachers. And then we got to say, what is sin? And how do a person sin? Now, we know how people double cross and stuff in deals and stuff like that. We know how people might be abusing other people to physically sin. But when we talk about sin, or chatat, we got different terminologies that we use here But when we look at the different areas, we got Asham itself, and Asham's like a guilt offering, and you got the word katat, which is like sin, but the word katat not only means sins, it means purification, because a woman that have a child, what act that she did that was bad? She had the child. So the katat also, I mean, when they translate as a sin offering, which is sometimes not that good in English, because you find out more about, when you read the book of Leviticus, that she's following the first command. One of the first commands to be fruitful and multiply. She's doing her job. So what sin is, that her offerings that she bring up, that they refer to as a katat, is basically known as a purification offering. And then when you talk about shalamim, which is peace offerings, those type of things. There is the when people have a complete they might get saved from a sickness or ailment, and they say, oh, I got peace. But one of the things that the offerings, that's the greatest ones that the Creator really delights in, is that the thanks offering, the torah offerings. The word torah means thanks. It means praise, so not only, and also it has a tincture of confession, so that same word, torah, thanks, praise, from the root, and also had the same root for like a type of confession, to be able to release yourself of certain things. So that is one of the things, those are definitely one of the offerings that the Creator delight in. And it's very few offerings that he actually delight in. That's one of them right there. So we're going to move straight ahead and just go to Isaiah a little bit before I go to the Psalm. And when we look at Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, I just want to read a couple portions. I like to start at the beginning part of the Haftorah of Isaiah, just a couple of verses there. The second and the third verse. Let me say, no, it was the second and third verse. Make sure. Where we go, 43. No, 3, we're going to the book of Isaiah, 43rd chapter. And taking it from the beginning of Isaiah, 21st verse. It said, the people which I formed for myself, that they might tell of my praise. All right, that's one of the things that's used there. Yet thou hast not called upon me, O Jacob, neither hast thou wearied thyself about me, O Israel. Thou hast not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings, neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. I have not burdened thee with a meal offering, nor wearied thee with frankincense. Thou hast brought me no sweet cane with money. Neither hast thou satisfied me with the fat of thy sacrifices. But thou hast burdened me with thy sins. Thou hast wearied me with thine iniquities. I, even I, am he that blotted out thy transgressions for my own sake. So this is one of the things to show that it ain't the sacrifices. It is. The Creator said, those things you burden me with. I'd rather you do the right thing. I'm the one that actually blotted the transgressions, not your sacrifices. So for those that think that that's the only way we atone for sin, because we carry sin on and they believe that somebody died, for the sins of the world. Well, not to be, really poking much, but our concept is, you charge me with a sin and I haven't even arrived yet. All right. I'm looking for the justice there. That would be my viewpoint, my personal viewpoint on that. And also, we read here that the Creator doesn't do that like that, work with it like that. All right. And in the 44th chapter of the same thing, 44th chapter, I want to pick it up from the 6th verse, just in the 44:6. I need to bring out this point here. Thus said the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. All right. So the Creator being our Redeemer, He's our King, our true King. I am the first and I am the last. And besides me, there's no God. And who as I can proclaim, let him declare it and set it in order for me, since I appointed the ancient people and the things that are coming, and that shall come to pass. Let them declare, fear ye not, neither be afraid. Right? For I'm not, for have I not announced unto thee of old and declared, and ye are my witnesses. So much for people that claim that, they're the witnesses there. They're talking about the children of Israel in this case. Is there a God besides me? Yea, there's no rock, I know not any. So this is what I'm sharing now is an Israelite, or what some people might say a Judaic viewpoint, but we say Israelite viewpoint, first of all, that if the Creator could tell you what's going to happen in the future, and he talking about, even certain parts he saved and make alive and all that stuff, and he said there's no God besides him, and then he said there's no rock, he know not any. How can we know something God don't know? He declared. And if the Creator said he don't know about anything else or anybody else exists, and through the prophet Isaiah, bring these words from God, and I guess a lot of people must have missed that portion in the book. But when you consider it, and then you get it construed with the sacrifices in there, and then you get it misconstrued with a new covenant. And I tell you in Jeremiah what a new covenant is, that you know the Lord, and it say about writing a whole new contract, and it say anything like that to that effect. But those are some of the things that are supposed to keep us on point about when we all look for the temple to be reestablished, but how it's going to function. That all that would be declared at that time, exactly who's going to do what and how it should be done. We know certain things that you say, that if any offering were in, that's one of the traditions. You're going to always have a thanks offering. So those are so much for the offerings I'm going to bring out now. And I'm going to go straight to the book of Psalms, the 50th chapter, that's somewhat related to this point here, which is about 23 verses. So I'm going to try to get through that kind of quickly. So, but if those get a chance, go back over the Torah, but basically take your time and read the sacrifices and understand how they operate. And I'd like to say, before I even go to the Psalm, I got to give a lot of respect to the late Hakohen Levi, Ben Levi, the founder of Hashaba. Now, I'm coming from a different group that was established before that Hashaba existed, which has been in Zakin. And we basically was more on a secular learning type theme. But Hakohen Levi, he was inspired, ahead of everybody else to try to formulate a priestly order amongst the Israelite community. And one of the things that, even though we didn't agree with, some of the actions that he was doing, he focused on studying about sacrifice and sacrificial rituals, and even tried to implement a few, but he actually studied it in depth. So he took the heart greatly, and it seemed a very importance when most people, even since the temple was destroyed, all the way to centuries later, to 1,000 years later, that a lot of people wasn't interested in studying that particular facet of Torah. So he was one of the legends and the pillars of the community that took an interest in this particular portion of the Kohanim, the priesthood. He took in account about sacrifices having some meaning beyond just burning flesh and slaughtering animals. So when we look at that, we had people that was ahead of their time, sometimes misunderstood, sometimes not appreciated, but those aspects of studying the core factor will make us more of a greater spiritual people in our relationship with God. And one of the things that let us know, he said, well, how is it that when you're close to God, you're in danger, and when you're far away from God, you're not really that much in danger? It seems like when you're far away from God, you should be more in danger than when you're real close to God. But you read early in the scriptures that God said, I'll be sanctified by those that come nigh me. That means you held to such a high bar and a high standard. So those people that would study about the priesthood and study about sacrifices and stuff, even though we can't implement them outside of the land here, that was a marvel undertaking, a bold undertaking. And it shows that the really fabric of the heart of an individual, how well and how strong they want to get so close to the Creator. So there's so much to say, and we go into the book of Psalms, 50th chapter.
We're in the book of Psalms, chapter 50, starting from verse 1. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Mismor le Asaf, El Elohim, Yahovah Diber, Vayikra Aretz, Mimis Rak, Shemesh, Ad Mevo'o. A psalm of Asaph. God, Yehovah hath spoken and called the earth, from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. Out of Zion the perfection of beauty God hath shined forth.
All right, hold it right there. All right. Most of the Psalms, you heard that word Mismor, which is like a song and stuff. So who are Asaph? Asaph, the guy, he was a leader, and most people refer to him as basically a descendant of Korah. And Korah, and the sons of Korah, rather. The sons of Korah are responsible for quite a few psalms in the book, and he's one of the major leaders and wrote some psalms himself. So though we know most of the psalms is contributed to King David, we know that other people in the book contribute psalms as well. So he himself, Asaph, is believed to be a descendant of Korah, Korah rather, not Korah, Korah, the ones that stood against Moses, and their children were saved. And I guess they became more spiritual in that sense, and they was the major singers, and they was Levites. And also, one famous descendant, that believed to be from that line of Korah rather, had to be Shemuel, the one who anointed the first king of Israel. But we're gonna look at it, and it says that, and it used the redundancy, God, the Lord, has spoken and called the earth. So that, he called the earth, into being, but it used the word, Elohim Adonai, the better Vayikra. So you got the word Vayikra here used, Eretz. So that means right then he's called. So when we talk about the book of Vayikra, and the opening the book of the Vayikra itself, and the Creator called the earth into being itself. That's what we read in Genesis, and he said, let there be blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But also the word, kara, we also, most of us that say that prayer on a regular, Kwadosh, and holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, and the whole earth is full of his glory. So when Isaiah used that song, it says, and the angels called to one another and said. So we got the word kara again. So, to be called, it means come close, come together. We could do this work and collectively. This is specifically what we're going to, entail upon ourselves. So here the Psalms open up like that with that same word there, that the Creator actually called the world into being. So it's a unique thing in the Creator. When you call somebody, that means you want them to really be really close to you in that vicinity. So that's a real close affinity. All right. So, and then we go further. It says, out of Zion. All right. Zion is another thing where everything happened, where the glory of God rested. When Solomon built the temple there, that place became holy. So, and that's why I'm talking about God has has shined forth. Because today, even though the temple is not there, even though the temple is destroyed, the spot itself, why would people fight during the Crusades back and forth and the temple is destroyed over a plot of land? You know, it has no major value. You know, it never mentions about, it mentioned about brass, it mentioned about different fruits and stuff. It mentioned about certain grain, you know, and it talk about your water is based on how you act in the land. So why so many people fight over that particular section? And because of the spirituality that's connected to that area, though the temple's no longer there, you know, it still was designated as the holy spot. And that's where, when they came back from Babylon after 70 years, they built the temple in the same spot. And when it's going to be reestablished from Ezekiel's vision, while he was in Babylon, they're going to be in the same spot. Everybody today don't want to give up that little parcel of ground. So so therefore, even without the building there, people flock to it because they have because the spiritual essence of the divine still resides there. And it goes on and said, where we at? 4 first?
Verse 3.
Verse 3. Right.
Verse 3 reads, our God cometh, doth not keep silent. Fire devoureth before him, and round about him it stormeth mightily.
Okay,
he calleth to the heavens above and the earth, that he may judge his people.
Hold right there. All right. Now, you know, he calleth to the heavens above and to the earth, that he may judge his people. All right. Now, what do the Creator need a witness for? Didn't Moses use that, you know, heaven and earth as a witness? Isaiah himself talked about heaven and earth as a witness. Somebody that gonna be around that you can't intimidate. You can't intimidate the heavens. Mm-hmm. You can't intimidate the earth. And plus, we're made up of both factions, so they know us through and through. Our spiritual side and our physical side. And the thing is that where can you go on earth that the earth don't know where you at? Where can you go in the heavens if you was able to go up there where the heavens don't know where you at? And so you got two witnesses, and the heavens and the earth suffer sometimes because of our actions. They can't do what they want to do. The rain is withheld. Can you imagine? Withheld? That means the rain won't come down.
Right.
The earth will not bring forth its produce.
Right.
Do we want to keep it there? So we went to captivity for Babylon not because we didn't observe the regular Shabbat alone. And said, so the land could enjoy her Shabbats. Can you imagine that? So we got some what we're seeing right now, some hostile witnesses.
Right.
And we seem like Moses told them to testify against us. So we seem like we got some real hostile witnesses right here, something that we can't escape. So only through the mercy of the Creator that we able to, be able to get out of a situation. Because the prosecutors, we always talk about the devil, and stuff like that. Well, we ain't talking about the devil now. Even in the Christian philosophy, the devil's only in one spot. And he occupied in the neighborhood. All right? Even in their doctrine. But let's read a little bit further.
Verse 5, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens declare his righteousness for God. He is judge, Selah. Okay,
so when we look at that area there, when we talk about the saints, these are the Sadiq, the Zaddikim, these are the most pious and righteous individuals. Right?
Holy ones.
That's what we're talking, So that's what we're looking at. But continue.
Verse 7, it reads, Hear, O my people, and I will speak. O Yisrael, I will testify against thee. God, thy God am I. I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices, and thy burnt offerings are continually before me.
Hold right there. Hold it. Let me just see if I understand this correctly. Because a lot of times, you might not see it clearly. Hear, all my people, and I will speak. O Israel, and I will testify against thee. All right. Then it goes on. God, thy God am I. The Creator said, make an acknowledgement. I'm still your God. But what happened? I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices. In other words, I'm not looking at that. Whether you did it or not, you could bring the sacrifice or not. I'm not reproving you because of that. That's we say immaterial, but that's material that's not really necessary for the Creator to really judge us. And it goes on and further and says, and thy burnt offerings are continually before me. All right. Yeah, I see all that. I will take no bullock out of thy house, nor he go out of thy folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the fields are mine. All right, go for the 12.
Verse 9.
12. Go pick it up in 12. I read the rest.
Verse 12, it reads, If I were hungry, I will not tell thee, for the world is mine and the fullness thereof. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Offer unto God the sacrifice of thanksgiving and pay thy vows unto the Most High.
Hold it right there. Hold it. He said, that's what I'm looking for. Offering thanksgiving. I want you to be thankful for what I do. I want you to be able to give me the proper praises I deserve. I want you to make a confession about how life is really set up good for you. That's what he look for. Not to the burnt offerings, not to the smoke. I was asked a question about the sacrifices, and they said, well, would it be all smoky smoke going all over the place and everything? And I had to reiterate that. I said that there's a sense of, if smoke went all over the place, how could the priests and stuff function properly up there? Now, we know when we barbecuing, those that barbecue, and you grilling stuff on the fire, you open up that lid, and you be fighting the smoke to flip the meat over, fighting the smoke to put the sauce on it. You be fighting the smoke to stir the coals or whatever, the little pieces of wood you got up under there, and you put it down, and you be coughing and cackling and choking. Can you imagine? So now, with that being said, it had to be a unique thing for those guys, the Kohens and stuff, to offer up and not make a mistake and not being choked to death in offering it up. And even incense is an offering. Flowers are offering, as well as meat was an offering. And oil is an offering. And salt had to be accompanied by everything. So it's two elements of the animal we're told we were never supposed to eat. And there's only two things in the animal and within that particular portion that's important in the sacrifice. We were told never to eat the blood, and we was told never to eat the fat. So when people say, well, I don't eat this part of the animal or that part of the animal, all right, that's, became a traditional custom not to do certain things. We know a custom about not eating certain things. Part of the animal was actually given, Jacob's children decided to do that, and that became a custom, the sin or the shame, because Jacob wrestled with the angel. We know in this particular situation that we just read in the book of Leviticus that we the only dietary law we actually had prior to this time was basically do not eat the blood. That was it. In Genesis, do not eat the blood. They could eat anything that moves. Don't know what knew about clean and unclean. And while I'm speaking on that, I'd like to just bring this out as well, is that when I had a discussion, and one of the things I brought out is that being a shepherd people, a nomadic people, our main diet would have probably been lamb, goat, and bull. That's main diet. We know when things got hard, then we had a donkey's head being sold, And I said, we thought about hog head cheese today. We say, I want some hog head, especially it was popular when I was a little kid. It ain't too popular today because everybody's pretty much watching their diet and watching how they eat. But when I was a little kid, people say, give me a hog head cheese sandwich. So that, and the guy be, cutting it off. I never could figure out where the hog head cheese comes from. But and it didn't taste as good as the spiced ham. But that's when you went up a little bit in your finances. But in any event, when you're young, you try some a lot of stuff, that's in the neighborhood. But we was told only not to eat the blood at that time. Later on, we are told about a dietary law, which is going to come up shortly in Leviticus 11th chapter. That's the first time we're told about a dietary law that's going to be related to our ritualistic cleanliness. So in Genesis, it used the word tahor and lo tahor. In Leviticus, when it gets to the dietary law, it uses another term, which I'll be speaking about later on, which is tahor and tameh, which is more, tameh is more extreme, because now it's talking about a particular diet that you're going to ingest. So if the patriarchs, some people like to believe that we, people didn't, we didn't eat everything. There was no law against eating anything except blood prior to, we and leaving out Egypt. So when people say, well, Abraham, them kept all the commandments of God, he said the commandments that he known to keep on a moral level, that's what he did. A command that God ever requested of him, that's what he did. But certain laws, if Abraham kept all these laws, then, for all time, then we wouldn't have people like, Moses and Aaron's father marrying their aunt when they bring the law and say you can't do that anymore. So we got to understand how the book and the time frame that certain laws came to us. Everything didn't come to us at one time. So we're going to pick it up from there. Let's go to the end of this. I think I spoke long enough.
Verse 15, it reads, and call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt honor me. But unto the wicked God saith, why hast thou to do? Declare my statutes, and that thou hast taken my covenant in thy mouth, seeing thou hatest instruction and casteth my words behind thee. When thou sawest a thief, thou hast company with him, and with adulterers was thy portion. Thou hast let loose thy mouth for evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother. Thou slanderest thy own mother's son.
Hold right there. All right. Now, before we get to the 21st verse, some people don't realize that you got people that goes and pray hard all the time, make every convocation all the time, had the outward look all the time, and it might be a kleptomaniac or one that's given into a whole lot of gossip. There's talking about one that know law, know the statutes, know when they're doing wrong, and they have that piety look, like a wolf with sheep's clothing on, and they still do those things. Those are the ones that this psalmist is talking about. David mentioned had encountered with guys like that. He even went so far and said people that, broke bread with him, went to the house of God with him, and sat at his own table. That's what shocked him. Okay, I took him in as family. And I said, Korban's supposed to bring you close. Bring you close. So some people get close to God, but yet they still be estranged to God because they want to do their own little thing, have their own little ways. But let's go a little bit further and finish this out. A few more verses.
Verse 21, it reads, "These things hast thou done, and should I have kept silent?
I'm going to expose you. Keep going.
Thou hast thought that I was altogether such a one as thyself, but I will reprove thee and set the course before thine eyes."
All right. In other words, some people think God is like them. I often say, God made man, and man constantly making God. You know, man has to think, but God don't have to think. We have to think because we figure, what are the variables? How this going to play out? Could something change? Could something be thrown off? If God had to think, that's why he said, my thoughts are not your thoughts. That means that I'm not sure. I'm in the planning stage. I don't know what I really want when we think about it. That ain't the type of God we serve, where you have a God that got to constantly figure, what should I do now? When we're in trouble, we have that kind of God. Now, when we try to employ and do certain things, then we're thinking about the variables. And so people that will come to the religious, different services and different places, that's what it's talking about now. And say, God understand, because he like me. I know what God think. Some people, I even heard people say that out their mouth. I know what God think. And God's telling us that this is not new. He's showing us in the book, the psalmist letting us know, Aesop, and saying, this is not new. People think that God is like them, think like they think. And God don't think like we think. God don't act like we have. But they think because they come and he's a singer before the Mishkan and later on the temple, the temple itself. And you see all kind of people come up with various reasons. And you can know when somebody is up to no good, but just trying to portray like they're up to good. You can almost see it and read and get that vibe most of the times. If you're in a spiritual, setting yourself. Let's read a bit, finish out the last one.
Verse 22.
Correct.
"Now consider this, ye that forget God, lest I tear in pieces and there be none to deliver. Whoso offereth the sacrifice of thanksgiving honoreth me. And to him that ordereth his way aright, will I show the salvation of God." Hallelujah.
All right, so that means right in there that he ain't talking about no burnt offerings. He's not talking about sin offerings. He said thanks offerings. That means you haven't done anything. You just want to show God that I'm with you. I appreciate you. I'm giving testimony about how good you are, better than I deserve. That's what it's talking about in the psalm is. And so when we talk about a sacrifice here, it's people that when people bring up a sacrifice, they really say, well, apology to the individual I took something from. I stole, I paid back X amount from what I stole. But is that enough? Because now I'm cool with this individual, but still am I cool with God? And I might not even be cool with the individual because he said, you shouldn't have stole from me in the first place. I'm looking at you different for the rest of your life. Even though I paid him and gave him the overplus. But he might say, man, I'm still mad, man. I mean, all right, we're straight, but we ain't straight. You know how people go, and the hold against it. It'd be 5 years down the line. I remember that time when you took so-and-so. Remind me of the time you took such and such. Remind me of the time when you said such and such. So some people will say, they actually say, I'm sorry to the individual, but that's not enough. I need to say, well, am I still okay with the creator? And that's what it's all about. So I hope you guys something out of what I said. Any mistakes been my own, and any questions, leave them there, and support the D.C.B channel as much as you can. And with that, say have a early Shabbat Shalom and Shalom Aleichem.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said that Abraham, from what I understood, basically that Abraham, before the Torah, in terms of animals and I guess eating animals, that it wasn't any restriction against eating certain animals. So we always say that they probably didn't eat these animals or not. But all right, I know that there wasn't a Torah, but even in the time of Noah, he knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. So, and just in knowing the difference between clean and unclean animals, don't you think that there was some sort of knowledge of what animals not to eat?
Well, that's when you think that it is got something to do with a health code or a religious code itself. Because when you say animals that's clean and not clean, how do we find out about what's clean and what's not clean? We only see in Noah that he took clean animals and unclean animals. That's all we see in the book of Genesis. But when we get to the book of Leviticus, it gives description of how to tell what is a clean animal and what is an unclean animal. But we don't have no description of what is a clean animal or unclean animal in Genesis or prior to that time until we reach the laws, the dietary laws as we know them today, in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. So that's given that information, and the only restriction was don't eat blood. So we like to assume, and which I mostly assume myself, and I'm just saying I assume,
right.
But when it's come down like in a platform like this, when I got to speak on what was given, then I had to give out what's given there, as opposed to what I would like to believe.
Gotcha. So I got another question. Burnt offering, grain offering, peace offerings, sin offering, and guilt offering. Is there any spiritual meaning behind all those offerings? Because those are basically the offerings that we give up. I believe also the Passover sacrifice, or that offering. I don't know. That's is there a spiritual meaning to all 5 of those?
Okay. Yeah. It's spiritual meaning to all 5 of the ones that you mentioned when it comes to the book of Vayikra. But okay, when it comes to the Passover offering, that is separate altogether. It's a whole nother classification, because now it just, and it has a meaning in itself as a memorial.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that has a different, it don't have anything to do with our habits, our moral standards. So out of all the other offerings, that's the only offering besides the thanks offering, pretty much.
Right.
That's the only offering doesn't have anything to do with our moral standards. It just simply remembering this what God did for us, bringing us out, which we're about to approach. And the stranger, Yikra always comes up usually a couple of weeks before Pesach or more, somewhere along there, every year. Right. So so not to confuse that as an offering that have anything to do with anything other than specify. And what's also unique is that when we read about the appointed times of the Creator, all right, when we read about the appointed times, and I was discussing it with one brother one time, is that you think they kept Sukkot while they was 40 years in the desert?
Oh, they were already dwelling in booths.
If it's supposed to be a memorial that you come out of Egypt, you get where you came from. You ain't get to where you're going.
Right. They were already dwelling in booths every day. It was a memorial.
Right. Oh, you know what I mean? So a lot of days, that's why you only read about the Passover one time.
Mm-hmm.
You read about the Passover one time. So when we think about that, saying, if Joshua had to circumcise themselves, and he's talking about doing the Passover because they weren't circumcised for 40 years in the wilderness, how you justify that not happening? So there's a lot of things that we would take for granted, but when we look at the specs and analyze the time frame and the sense that it would make, when this observance will come into being and when it's not coming to being. And we get hints of it when we read the law.
So what's the difference between a guilt offering and a sin offering? I mean, there is no offering for presumptuous sin, right? So there is an offering for a sin that you do in error.
And it'd be a debate about when Yom Kippur whether it covers that one, which is presumption time once in a year.
Right.
That's always issue. But it's for a sense that when a guy did something, and did it wrong, then you say, okay, we say, well, when they say there's no offering for presumptuous sin, then you got to ask yourself, I did that now, and I know I did wrong when I was doing wrong,
right?
And that was my intention to do wrong.
Right.
How do I straighten it out? I stop. I'm not doing it anymore. So how do I make amends?
Right.
And so the Creator allow an individual to be able to make amends by saying, this is what this is what you do. But you could be guilty already for certain things, and you did certain thing that's wrong, and it don't have to necessarily be against the individual. It could be something strictly against the Creator.
Right.
And you say, well, okay, just between me and the Creator, He knows what I did. Right. Nobody else knows what I did. So I know I did it, and I knew I was wrong when I did it. So how do I get back right? And then it goes back to what I said earlier. A broken heart and a contrite spirit. So we can always bring back the words.
Okay. Yeah, because those are things that I always had like in mind. I know that in Christianity they try to connect it with the they got this thing called types and shadows, and they try to connect it with the whole resurrection of the Christ of the New Testament and him being the sacrificial lamb, and they try to make a connection with these particular verses in the first 7 chapters in Leviticus that has to do with the offering. So I just wanted people to get it might be Christians listening. We get different types of people that listen, and they try to make a connection. So
well, as we look at the early part in my talk, I talk about if the Kohen sinned, how is he sinning and bringing sin upon the people? Why should I be affected by him sinning, by his mistake?
Because he could have misled. He could have said something that caused the congregation to err. That could be one of the ways.
He might not. He might not even cause anything for the congregation to err. He might have just messed up on his own personal stuff, and now I need him to bring my offering up.
Right.
So now he ain't right.
He ain't right.
So he's not right. And I need him to do it because I'm not allowed to do it.
Not allowed.
So that's how he could bring sin upon the people, not only just by doing something or giving them misinformation and steering them in the wrong path.
Right.
But also by in the sense and a good example is Aaron. And with the golden calf. A good example of that is Aaron. And Moses said, what did the people do to you to make you bring some great sin on them?
Yeah.
He didn't say bring it on Aaron. He said that you brought on them.
Right. Because
of your position. So and it plays out later, how dynamic that God, he had to pray for Aaron. God wanted to kill him. Yeah. And we didn't see, hey, Aaron didn't say, this be your gods. Right. Other people said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are some questions that I had. So once again, to the people out on the internet land, whatever questions you might have, it doesn't necessarily have to be connected with the Sidra or what Nasik just went through. It could be a question about anything. If he could answer it, he will answer them on the next show. All right. So thank you all once again for tuning in. I pray that the Most High God, Creator of heaven and earth, be with you all. I pray that everyone is blessed, and I pray that the Creator will continue to be with Kobe Yisrael scattered in the four corners of the earth. Shalom,
Amen.
shalom. And
Shalom.
I'll be speaking to you, Nasik.
Okay. Shalom.
Shalom.